Hello everyone, welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I'm your host, as always, Darius Sethna, joining you once again this week for another Cleveland Sports Show episode 94, if I'm not mistaken. Man, we have a lot to talk about today. Cavs on a roll. They've won their last 3 games. Also, don't miss out, Logan Purcell will be joining me a little bit later. We're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns, diving deep into that frustrating loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to be wrapping up their season in this episode as well. We're also going to bring a sports fact to you from the NHL, and we're also going to give you updates with the Premier League. So stay tuned. Here is episode 94 of the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna, and we have a lot to get into today. Kevin Porter Jr. is no longer a Cleveland Cavalier, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of news to discuss about the Cavs this week. Logan Purcell and I are going to get into that, as well as wrapping up the Browns season after that loss this past weekend to the Kansas City Chiefs. However, let's get you started off with your sports fact of the day. And if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, then you're definitely going to love these facts. Or if you just love goals in the NHL in general. We actually have 2 facts for you, so a bit of an interesting one today. So today is January 23rd, 2021, and back on this day, in 1943, we'll start there, the Detroit Red Wings scored NHL record 8 goals in one period. Yes, 8 goals in one period. But guess what? Following that, 1 year later, after that 8 goals in one period, astounding fact, in 1944, same date, the Red Wings followed that up with 15 goals against New York Rangers. It was a record of most consecutive goals in an NHL game and the record for the most lopsided game. A 15-0 win for the Detroit Red Wings over the New York Rangers. So how about that? 1 year, you put up 8 goals in a period, and the following year, you even beat that record by scoring 15 goals in a game. Most lopsided game, 15-0. Now, that year in 1943, the Detroit Red Wings actually won their 3rd Stanley Cup. The team has a total of 11 Stanley Cups, as well as 6 total conference championships. So as I mentioned, Detroit Red Wings, if you love them or if you love goals, these were some definitely some great sports facts for you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some Premier League action. That's right, Premier League is still going strong. Manchester United lead the table with 40 points, with 12 wins, 4 draws, and 3 losses in their 19 matches so far. Manchester City come in at 2nd place, 38 points, with 11 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses. Tied with Manchester City for that 2nd place. Right now in 3rd place is Leicester City, 38 points for them, thanks to 12 wins, 2 draws, but 5 losses on the season. Liverpool come in at 4th place with 19 matches played. They have 9 wins, 7 draws, and only 3 losses so far in the season. Tottenham Hotspur come in at 5th place. They have 9 wins, 6 draws, 3 losses for a combined 33 points. Everton come in at 6th place with 10 wins, 2 draws, 5 losses for 32 total points. Tied with Everton is West Ham in 7th place, 19 matches played so far for them. They come in with a record of 9 wins, 5 draws, 5 losses for 32 points as well. Let's get you your stats on the Premier League so far, ladies and gentlemen. Mohamed Salah has officially taken over as the top goal scorer in the Premier League. Right now, Mohamed Salah of Liverpool with 13 goals on the season. Harry Kane and Son Heung-min, both Tottenham teammates, come in tied at second place, 12 goals for each of them. Bruno Fernandes, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and Jamie Vardy all tie for third place, each of those players respectively with 11 goals. Now, Harry Kane was second, as I just mentioned, was second in scoring in the Premier League, and he's also first in assists still. However, he's not the only one in double-digit assists in the double-digit assist tally. Kevin De Bruyne has officially joined him. De Bruyne of Manchester City has 10 assists on the season. Harry Kane still leads the league in assists, however. He has 11 assists so far on the year. Bruno Fernandes and Jack Grealish tie for third place, each of them with 7 assists. Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur also on the list, tying for fourth place. He has 6 assists on the season so far. Let's get into your matches for this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Only one match for us today on January 23rd, 2021, match day. Aston Villa will be taking on Newcastle at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Tuesday is when the slate of games will resume in the Premier League. On Tuesday, Newcastle will be taking on Leeds. Crystal Palace will be going up against West Ham. Southampton will be facing off against Arsenal. West Brom will be taking on Manchester City. Chelsea will be facing off against the Wolves on Wednesday. And then also on Wednesday, Burnley going up against Aston Villa. Brighton taking on Fulham. Manchester United taking on Sheffield United. Everton will be going up against Leicester City. And then Thursday, Tottenham Hotspur will be taking on Liverpool. So for that week, those are all the slate of matches. If you need to check those matches again, they're right there on Google. Just type in Premier League, and then they will have the matches, the standings, the stats, the games, everything that you love about the Premier League will be right there waiting for you. We'll talk about match day 21 of 38 in our next episode. We'll give you updates on the standings in the Premier League, the games that you can watch, as well as who's leading the league in assists and scoring as well. But don't forget about those Premier League standings, because they are still as tight as ever. Only a 2-point difference between first place Manchester United and second place Manchester City. We know the rivalry that if you're a soccer fan, you certainly know the rivalry that takes place in Manchester between those two teams, on almost like, the Los Angeles Clippers and LA Lakers rivalry, but it might be even a little more intense than that. These English fans are very passionate about their Premier League, and we're passionate about it as well. We'll give you more updates about it next week when we have some more games to talk about, and we'll give you an update on the stats as well. Now, Logan Purcell will be joining us. We're going to be talking about Cavs trading Kevin Porter Jr., but they've still been on a roll without him, and they've also been without another Kevin, and that would be by the name of Kevin Love. We'll also dive deep into the Cleveland Browns and what happened against the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, Logan and I will also break down the upcoming matches in the NFL as the AFC and NFC championships are upon us, and we'll be talking about who will be going to the Super Bowl, which is only 2 weeks away. I mean, this NFL season went by so fast. And Logan Purcell will be joining us right now. And ladies and gentlemen, he's back with me again this week. Logan Purcell, Nordonia freshman. Logan, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us once again. Really appreciate all your time. We have a lot to get into today, actually, starting with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Logan, who have won their last 3 games in rather surprising fashion. Now, the Cavs beat the Knicks last Friday, 106-103, but the 2 bigger wins came this past week. The Cavs had 2 games postponed. They were supposed to go to Washington, D.C. over the Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, however, could not because the Wizards had too many COVID problems, so the Cavs basically got a few days more of rest, and it paid off against a Brooklyn team who made their NBA debut, or All-Star debut, all the stars ready to go, in Cleveland. Logan, Kyrie Irving played his first game in Cleveland this past Wednesday, for the first time since October 17th, 2017. That was my freshman year of high school. That was Kyrie's debut with the Celtics. Was the last time he played in Cleveland before Wednesday night. That was just a fact in itself. But, what was great was the Cavs' victories, and they put it on the Nets in a 2-overtime win this past Wednesday. Logan, Colin Sexton went off for 42 points. I heard a lot of kids at Nordonia High School talking about this game. I'm sure you must have as well. Colin Sexton was on fire in overtime. He would finish the game with 42 points in 38 minutes to go along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Chetty Osman would finish second in scoring for the Cavs, the only other player to score at least 20. He scored 25 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. Nets kind of looked off. Durant and Irving were sensational. Durant with 38 points, Kyrie Irving with 37 points. But James Harden, only 21 points, played 50 minutes. But he did have a triple-double in that Nets loss in Cleveland. Now, Cavs followed that up with another win against Brooklyn yesterday. Cavs are just on a roll right now, Logan. It was a much more competitive game, but Cavs pulled away in the third quarter. This was something interesting because the Cavs usually, the third quarter is their Achilles heel. However, that was not the case last night. Kevin Durant did not play last night due to some injury concerns, so the Nets were resting him. However, Kyrie Irving and James Harden did play. 38 points for Kyrie. Again, last night, he's been sensational since his return in 31 minutes. James Harden only finished with 19 points, but he did have a double-double, those 19 points, along with 11 assists and 5 rebounds. Logan, I'll hand it over to you. What have you seen from this Cavs? We're going to get into the Nets side of things, but in terms of the Cavs right now, they're 8-7, so they're above 500 again. What have been your overall thoughts on their performances and Colin Sexton? And it seems like everyone's getting back. Garland's back. Dylan Windler has returned as well. So how do you feel overall about the Cavs right now, especially after these wins against the Nets?
Well, I think the first name that comes to mind when you think of these Cavs wins this past week has got to be Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
You already mentioned it, the 42-point, explosive performance a couple nights ago against Brooklyn, and then last night, 25 points, almost a double-double there with, I believe, 9 assists, or was it rebounds? I think it was assists, though. But he's played a very well-rounded couple of games, against the Knicks. And as I mentioned, great performances against the Nets, but a lot of, I talked about how the Cavs were missing one key factor that comes with teams that can contend, and that is an A-plus player. But, and going into the season, I mentioned numerous times that I didn't think Colin Sexton or Garland or, Drummond were those guys. But, Colin Sexton might be, starting to emerge as a very talented young star in this league. And, I think we're starting to, really see his ability to, score the basketball as a straight-up scorer.
Yeah, and here's a statistic I didn't know, Logan. Colin Sexton did something that LeBron James didn't even do in his first 10 games with the Cavs. Colin Sexton became the first player in Cleveland Cavaliers history to open his season with 20-plus points in his first 10 games. That is astounding to me, Logan. So you were definitely right on the money. It seems like Colin Sexton has a chance to be that A-plus player you were talking about. But, Logan, I have a question for you. Even, without that A-plus player, do you think the Cavs can still, compete for a playoff spot, even without that A-plus guy you were mentioning?
Well, to me right now, I wouldn't say Colin Sexton is an A-plus player. I would say he's played like one.
Yeah.
To me, 10 games is a lot of games. You think, okay, well, that's consistency. Well, we're talking about a 72-game season this year.
Right.
So, I'd like to see at least till All-Star break until I start saying, okay, this guy's real. But, to a degree, I don't think that they can contend without. Because you're basically saying, so can this team contend without the performance of Colin Sexton so far this year? Because he's played like an A-plus player. So if you take off, 20 of those 42, 22 of which came in overtime, the Cavs don't have a chance in that game.
Right.
So to me, I don't believe they can contend without the way Colin Sexton has performed. So the answer to your question to me would be no.
Were you surprised, Logan, about these two victories? I mean, the Brooklyn Nets had all their stars. On Wednesday, they were healthy. Were you surprised that the Cavs walked away with both of these, or was this something you expected?
Oh, well, it definitely wasn't something I expected. I mean, you're talking about like three future Hall of Famers on one team against, to be honest, a team of relative no name compared to the rest of the NBA. So, I mean, Colin Sexton, performed on another level on Wednesday and last night. So, no, I definitely didn't expect him to walk away with a victory, but a lot of things this year have happened that you didn't expect. So,
that is absolutely for sure, Logan. Now, we just talked about the Cavs. I want to get into the Brooklyn Nets side of things. And I've been doing a lot of thinking this week, Logan, and I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't like this Nets roster whatsoever. Yes, it's great. We have all the stars on one team. It's, especially in the New York City area, the biggest market in the country, New York City, in Brooklyn, and all the stars are there. But to me, Logan, I think the Nets have lost their identity. When I thought about the Brooklyn Nets before the Harden trade, I thought of two superstar players as well as young talent. You talked about Karis LeVert. Jared Allen and Taurean Prince have certainly had their revenge games against the Nets. Even last night, Jared Allen was a beast. He finished with 19 points in 19 minutes, and one of the broadcasters actually, I think it was the Brooklyn broadcaster, Ian Eagle, last night, who said it's purple rain in Cleveland, and that's because Taurean Prince had 14 points in 22 minutes last night, and he had a terrific game Wednesday as well. So if you're Brooklyn, you lost those two integral pieces to your roster. Rodions Kurucs is gone. Brooklyn have just lost that youth factor, and now their championship window is closed. I feel like now with the Nets, the problem is going to be, Logan, instead of, it's obviously championship or bust, but I feel like now there's this new situation of we have to get our stars, equal amount of touches. Harden has to take his shots. Kyrie has to take his shots. We know Kevin Durant's an unselfish player, but I'm really concerned about how Kyrie and Harden are going to share this backcourt. I'm not sure. This is a tough task to ask Steve Nash in his first year as an NBA head coach. Presently constructed, I do not like the Brooklyn Nets in terms of their roster. I love the Nets roster heading into this season. But, Logan, I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you feel the same way? We obviously know the Brooklyn Nets should be a playoff contending team, but do you feel like they've lost their identity?
Well, I would say that they've lost their identity, but I wouldn't always, look at that as a bad thing. We're talking about Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. When you think of those names, you think of elite basketball players.
Right,
so to
yeah.
me, I think that, they've lost their identity for the time being, but I think at the same time, they've only played 2 games together. I think you got to give them a chance to maybe find it a little bit in the coming games. But I think one of the biggest issues, especially, against this Cavs team, is, Kyrie's first game back, he comes out and shoots 28 shots.
Yeah.
I mean, and your first game back, I get you're, another level, you're a great player, basketball player offensively, but, you, to me, should not be shooting more shots than Kevin Durant, or even James Harden for that matter. So I think that one big thing that this backcourt, as you mentioned, Kyrie Irving and James Harden are going to have to learn is the sacrifice. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but, if they can, then they have a chance to be the most dangerous offensive team in the league.
For sure, Logan. I hope you're right. I hope this works out. I don't question the offensive side of the ball. I really question that defense. You're giving up 145 points. The Cavs are actually the second worst offense in the entire NBA. Out of the 30 teams, they rank 29th. And if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you can't be giving up 125, 145 against the Cavs. Now, speaking of the Cavs, I forgot to mention to you, Logan, Jared Allen. I mentioned to you about the Nets, but how do you think they played with the Cavs? Jared Allen, as I mentioned last night, 19 points in 19 minutes. Taurean Prince had 14 points in 22 minutes. How did you feel about those new guys playing with the team?
Yeah, Jared Allen, Taurean Prince personally surprised me the most on Wednesday night. He had a very good shooting game, and even last night, 14 points on the night. It was very, very good performances all around. But one of the underrated stats that I look at a lot of the times when I look at, the box scores of the game is the plus minus.
Yeah.
A lot of the plus minuses make a big difference. Colin Sexton was plus 18. Torian Prince himself was plus 14, and I know, you can't really rely on that stat, but it doesn't matter. It does help you to decide who's better on the court with who. And
right.
To me, Torian Prince has done a lot more than I expected him to do. When they had first made the trade, I looked at him as almost like, just another body in there.
Right.
A better wing defender.
And
he's played a lot more than just that. He's become a little bit more of a role scorer, if you will. A good guy that you can rely off on the bench to get you, 10, 11 points a game. And Jared Allen, we knew this guy was real. We knew he was going to come in and do his thing in Cleveland. I think personally, we're all just waiting for Andre Drummond's exit of Cleveland.
Do you think it should be McGee instead of Drummond? Because Cavs are barely playing McGee. Do you think Drummond should stay in that? I mean, I think it should be Drummond should stay, and then Jared Allen would be the backup. I think you have your center position locked up. Do you think it should be McGee that should leave, Logan?
Well, you can look at it one of two ways, right? You can look at it the way that you're talking about, keeping Drummond in there and doing kind of what the Nets did and keeping Allen as a sixth man off the bench to help run that second group.
Right.
But you're talking about Jared Allen, who's averaged over a double-double on his career. He's, 23 years old?
22, I think.
I think 22?
Yeah, I believe, 22.
Yeah, and, I think right now, Andre Drummond is a younger asset, and I think that you could get better value for him than you would be able to get for JaVale McGee, and I feel like draft pieces for the future right now is what the Cavs could use, because I think the Cavs are just one really good wing player. Because if you look at the Cavs, you think, okay, well, they've got a really solid backcourt. You've got Garland and Sexton, who, in my opinion, are pretty durable minus the beginning of this season.
Right.
Sexton, obviously, you mentioned, is playing insane these past couple games. You think of a really strong, front court, when you've got a healthy Larry Nance playing, that's pretty much guaranteed double-double and a really good defender. You've got, possibly Jared Allen. You could look in the draft this coming year, to maybe get another wing guy, to help out that group, maybe get Teddy Osman some time off the bench and get a new younger guy in there to help out.
And also, Logan, want to get to the Kevin Porter Jr. story that's been percolating out of Cleveland. Now, Kevin Porter Jr. last Friday was at the Cavs-Knicks game. He did not play, but he was on the bench with the team. However, that same night, he got into a screaming match with other personnel of the Cavs because his locker was moved to make room for Torian Prince's locker. And after that fight, rumors came out that the Cavs were planning on either trading or waiving Kevin Porter Jr., and they've officially traded Kevin Porter Jr. to the Houston Rockets for a draft pick. Now, as I mentioned, Kevin Porter Jr. going to Houston. Logan, if I'm looking at the Houston, I want to talk about the Rockets a little bit right now, especially after I heard that Kevin Porter Jr. is going there. Right now, Logan, Rockets are not a great record. They've lost a few games here and there. They actually won their most recent game, but they're 14th in the Western Conference out of 15 spots. They have 5 wins and 9 losses. They're 3-7 in their last 10. So, Logan, I'm liking this Houston Rockets so far, and I don't think this is going to be a team that should be below the 500 mark for much longer. I'm looking at John Wall is looking like he is in great shape so far. Christian Wood has really come out of his shell this season. You still have DeMarcus Cousins. PJ Tucker is still there in Houston. We know that he is one of the most reliable players in the NBA. He's a great three-point shooter as well. You have Eric Gordon, who's a former 6th man of the year. Victor Oladipo, forgot to mention him, the Indiana Pacers star. Sterling Brown, who I think is a very physical, intimidating guard from the Milwaukee Bucks, is there as well. I like Ben McLemore. He's a small forward who's a quality three-point shooter as well. So in that case, you add Kevin Porter Jr. to all of that. Do you believe that the Houston Rockets should be a playoff team? I know the West is tough, but even if they're not a playoff team, Logan, can they still be above 500 with this roster?
Well, with the kind of roster that you're talking about, and the way that people have played so far, they should definitely be a team above 500. I I would kind of compare them to a team similar to the Cavaliers, maybe just a bit better. Maybe more like I said, a better Cavalier team because they've got a couple of guys that could really play basketball. You've got an emerging star who seems to be playing, again, as you said, out of his shell in Christian Wood.
Right.
And then you add a guy who is a proven scorer and so far throughout his career. Kevin Porter's had, I would say, a hot and cold start to his NBA career. It's been very off and on so far, but he seems a bit of a troublemaker these past couple months in Cleveland. So I like the trade for Houston. I think they really badly needed a scorer off the bench because you've got Wall who can facilitate. You've got Oladipo who again proven can get his own shot, can do his thing, and then Christian Wood who's getting about almost 17 a game, 17 points a game ish.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this is a great move for the Rockets, and I think this team has to be above 500. And if they're not, I think it's about time to basically get rid of everything and pull a Philadelphia 76er and just trust the process.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, still some young talent on Houston, but these are some old, John Wall is older, DeMarcus Cousins is older, Victor Oladipo isn't, and he isn't, young or anything like that. He's in his prime right now, still has definitely a few years left, but Kevin Porter Jr., last year with the Cavs, averaged about 23 minutes a game, about 10 points, give or take, but he was shooting efficiently from the field, shot about 44% from the field, averaged about 3 rebounds and 2 assists as well. So I'll be very excited to see what Kevin Porter Jr. will bring to the Houston Rockets now that he is no longer part of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Speaking of Kevins, we're going to keep it on the Kevin cycle here, Logan. Let's talk about Kevin Love, who has not played since the Cavs' big win on December 27th against the Philadelphia 76ers. Logan, is Kevin Love seeing Kevin Love in a sweatshirt on the bench every game? Does that entice you to say we need to trade him even more? Because I don't really see why he's there. It's kind of ridiculous at this point to me.
Yeah, I think that the Cavs it's kind of a joke that they need to get rid of Kevin Love, and I think it's been that way. Like I've mentioned numerous times, I think when when LeBron left in 2018, it was done. It was time. It was time to blow it up, get as many picks and things as you can. Because if you look at him now, you just mentioned he doesn't play. The durability isn't there. The ability to shoot isn't there. The athleticism isn't there. He's not worth nearly as much as he used to be worth. At best, you're probably getting a C+, B- player and a second-round pick for him.
Right.
If that. Because, I just think that the Cavs royally screwed this one up, and I think they really wanted to see Kevin Love back in his Minnesota Timberwolves form, back at 25 and 15 a game.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening, frankly, ever again. He's just not there anymore. The physical injuries, the mental health issues, just things like that have just really gotten in his way. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's about time for him to, make an exit.
Yeah, and maybe a change of scenery will help him boost his performance. We'll certainly see what happens there if he continues to stay with the Cavs or if he does end up getting traded. Let's get to the standings real quick here, ladies and gentlemen. Overall, in the Eastern Conference, Philadelphia 76ers lead the pack. They won 2 straight games this week against the Boston Celtics. Bucks lost their most recent game. They lost to the Lakers this past Thursday. They're 9-6 on the season for second place in the East. Indiana's in at third place. I'm really excited to see this new Pacers team when Karis LeVert hops onto the court for them. Celtics come in at fourth place, 8-6, and guess what? Cleveland Cavaliers are 8-7. They're fifth place in the Eastern Conference. So if the playoffs were to start today, Logan, the Cavs would face off against the Celtics in the first round. Boston would have home court advantage. Let's look at the Western Conference right now, Logan. Clippers and Lakers are deadlocked in terms of records and positioning for first place. Clippers right now are officially in first place. They've won their last 6. Lakers in second place, as I mentioned. Utah Jazz in third place, Logan. That's definitely a surprise to me. They are 11-4 on the season. They've won their last 7. So after being 4-4 to start the season, Utah with 7 wins in a row. Phoenix Suns, Chris Paul and the crew, 8-6 on the season so far in fourth place. And then Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers come in at 8-6. So, Logan, I'll hand it to you on this. Any surprises you're seeing overall in these standings? Doesn't have to just be top 5, top 6. Overall, in each conference, what are some of the surprises that you're seeing right now in the NBA? Because as you mentioned, there have been a lot of surprises this year.
Yeah, well, for me, it's probably, believe it or not, the Clippers.
Really?
After the bubble performance last year and, the performance of playoff P, I don't really, I didn't expect them to be even near top 3, to be honest with you. I mean, I figured their top 3 was pretty much locked in with, Los Angeles, Denver, and, probably, Portland or Utah or a team like that. One of the teams that has a little bit more depth than, really good one player. And, but let me tell you, I mean, right now, right behind Joel Embiid, I've got Paul George for MVP right now.
Even over Kevin Durant, you have Paul George even over Kevin Durant. Just wanted to ask you that.
I do right now, yeah. I mean, because Kevin Durant's doing a lot of great things over in Brooklyn, but he hasn't taken Brooklyn to a number 1 seed. And don't get me wrong, Kawhi Leonard is a great basketball player, but I don't see Kawhi Leonard having a career year over there right now in Los Angeles. But Paul George seems to be having a very, very good year. But I mean, right now, I've got Joel Embiid for MVP, but like I said, I think both Paul George and Kevin Durant are right on his tail, but I've got Paul George over him right now. So to me, the Clippers are the biggest surprise as of right now.
And also, I mean, I would say my biggest surprise, Logan, definitely, I think the Clippers. I was not seeing them be 12-4, but I think the third place Utah Jazz in the West. I mean, I was expecting Phoenix to probably have a better record than them. I was expecting Dallas to be a little bit more consistent than they are right now. Dallas is only 8-7. I thought they'd have a better record after 15 games. I thought that the Nuggets would have a better record than the Jazz, especially having the Nuggets beat Utah in the bubble last year in the playoffs in that 7-game series. But Utah is not messing around, Logan. They're 11-4, and we've talked about them these last few weeks. To me, they just have a little bit of everything. They've got the shooting, they've got the big man, and they have that that emerging player who can possibly be A+ very soon in Donovan Mitchell. And I really love what I'm seeing from this Utah team. I'll be interested to see if Quinn Snyder, head coach Quinn Snyder, and the crew can keep it up. Logan, that concludes our NBA talk for this week. Let's get you updated with the schedule real quick for the Cleveland Cavaliers, ladies and gentlemen. So Cavs have today off, obviously. They will be in Boston at the TD Garden tomorrow for a matchup with the Celtics at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The Cavs will then return home the next night for a matchup with LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. That's right. Let's see if LeBron plays, but the Lakers are coming to Cleveland this upcoming Monday. Game time for that one is at 8 p.m. Cavaliers will then host the Pistons this upcoming Wednesday at 7 p.m. Then they will head out for a 2-game road trip. First one being in New York against the Knicks, and then the Cavs will fly to Minneapolis for a matchup with the Timberwolves on next Sunday, January 31st. And Logan, that concludes our NBA news, as I mentioned. Let's talk about the NFL, and first let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. We were very excited about this game against the Chiefs. Rough start for the Browns in that first quarter. They fell behind early after that Patrick Mahomes touchdown. But speaking of Patrick Mahomes, Logan left the game with a concussion. I'm surprised the guy didn't break his neck. However, you have to give credit to Chad Henne, who, only 6 for 8, threw for 66 yards, but he was critical in this Chiefs victory. Browns fell to Kansas City by a final score of 22-17, so their season is over. But Browns, I think you think something positive here in this game against Kansas City, outscored the Chiefs in the second half by a total score of 14-3. And so, I mean, if you look at that, the Browns right there, that's something positive. Baker Mayfield did have an interception, but he did throw for a touchdown as well. 23-37 for Baker, threw for 204 yards. Kareem Hunt with a touchdown, Jarvis Landry with a touchdown, and then Carl Joseph with an interception as well. let's look at overall this game, Logan. What were your big takeaways from this Browns-Chiefs matchup?
Well, a lot. I had a lot of takeaways from this game. A lot of positives, but some negatives also. You know, you look at the box score. You think, well, Baker had a good game. Just over 200 yards, touchdown, a pick, pretty average. You think about it. But to me, the biggest issue, if I had put the loss in someone's hands, had to be Kevin Stefanski, of all people. And the reasoning behind that is you're talking about you have a top 3 locked number 1. Stud running back in Nick Chubb, who ran for 69 yards, 5.3 averages per carry, and you handed it to him 13 times.
Yeah.
And to me, that is just unacceptable. And I get, you were playing from behind, but I mean, and they were stout on the run for a couple of plays, but you knew that this guy doesn't get tired. He just continues to pound into you. The defense gets tired of tackling him, and then they start missing tackles, and it breaks off bigger and bigger and bigger. But he handed it off to him 13 times. To me, Baker should have never even come close to throwing 40 times in this game. And in my belief, Nick Chubb in the running game should have been, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb combined should have been around 25, 30 carries. And I think Baker should have been around 20 throws. Yeah,
Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb only combined for 19 carries in the game this past Sunday, Logan. So that's definitely a concern. You were talking about Stefanski as well. Even, with some of the mistakes he made this past Sunday, I've been hearing a lot of rumors that he should be a Coach of the Year candidate. Do you still think, even after his performance on Sunday, that he should still be in nomination for Coach of the Year?
I do. I do think he should be a candidate. I do not think he should win it. I was, the biggest, Kevin Stefanski for Coach of the Year, pusher that I'm sure you've talked to, but after that performance, I don't know if you can just, straight out, give it to him. I think,
right.
Now you're putting Andy Reid in the conversation with that, fourth and inches call at the end of that game. Some people call it stupid and insane. I call it gutsy and intelligent. So, a lot of credit go to Andy Reid there, but I don't know if you could just hand the Coach of the Year award to Kevin Stefanski after that kind of week.
And how did you feel overall about the Chiefs' performance, Logan? As we mentioned, Patrick Mahomes had that touchdown early in the game, but then went out with a concussion. Still nervous. I'm a little nervous about the Chiefs going into their next round. They'll be playing against the Bills. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Chad Henne had to step in, and as you mentioned, Chiefs coach with some big calls down the stretch. And, Tyreek Hill had a good game as well. Overall thoughts on the Chiefs. Do you think the way the Chiefs performed Sunday, Logan, that they can repeat as Super Bowl champions?
Well, if they perform like that this Sunday against this Bills team, I think they're going to get absolutely blown out of the water. Because another, one of the questionable calls that I saw with Kevin Stefanski was, about 4.5 minutes to go. The Browns had the ball. They were pushing the ball down the field a little bit. They were at their own 35, I believe, or something like that. And then fourth and, 4.5 minutes to go, you're down 5, excuse me. To me, you have to go for that. And I know it's a risky call, but you have 4.5 minutes left, and you have two of the best offensive weapons that the league has to offer on the opposing side. But, the quarterback hadn't been able to move the ball all game long. Yeah. Mahomes went out.
Right.
So, to me, I know it's a gutsy and an unfortunate call, but, and I know he was going to get knocked if they didn't get it, but to me, you had to make that decision because, you're in the playoffs for a reason. When it comes to playoff times, it's not about who coaches the safest. It's about who coaches and makes the right decisions. And to me, you got to be willing to take risks. But if the Chiefs play like that against the Bills, Stephon Diggs is going to rack up 200 yards receiving. That's my bet right now. If the Chiefs don't score more than 30, I'm going to say the exact same thing I said about the Browns last week. If the Chiefs don't score more than 30, they don't stand a chance.
And Chiefs will be hosting the Bills at Arrowhead Stadium for the AFC championship game. Also, Logan, let's get back to the Browns side of things, where we're going to wrap up their season now. Obviously, now that they lost, their season has concluded. First of all, overall impressions of this Browns season. It's been one heck of a ride. I kept telling my family 2020 has been pretty terrible for everything except the Browns. And, overall, I think it was a great season. Obviously, a step in the right direction, having gone 0-16 a few years ago. But, Logan, your overall thoughts on this Browns season, your reflections, what were your takeaways?
My biggest takeaway of this past Browns season has to be, thank God we found our new head coach.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about Baker Mayfield. Everybody's going to talk about Nick Chubb and the great season that he had, or Kareem Hunt and the new effectiveness in the red zone that he had. But to me, it's got to be Kevin Stefanski, because if you look at the Browns the past, 6-7 years, the decade, if you will, quarterback's been a big issue. You go back to like the Colt McCoy days, but that was a big issue. But the even bigger overlying issue has to be the head coach.
Yeah.
There's been a hole there for a lot of years, and I think that they finally found their guy in Kevin Stefanski. But a lot of credit to Baker Mayfield in the second half of the season. He stepped up and played a very, very efficient second half of the year. He is, a great year. Not as many picks as last year, not even close.
Right.
So a lot of credit to him. But to me, Kevin Stefanski is the story of the Browns season.
And Logan, NFL draft will be here before you know it. But based on what you saw from this Browns team all season long, we've obviously harped about the defensive issues they've had this season. What do you think the Browns need going into the NFL draft? Because it seems like they have their quarterback as future established with Baker. You obviously mentioned Kevin Stefanski he's definitely going to be the head coach of the Browns for years to come, I would think. So, looking at this NFL draft, Logan, what do the Browns need in order to take a step further in the right direction?
I think the one thing that you can look at the Browns all year long consistently and say this was your issue has to be the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And this draft class, based on what we've seen so far, is absolutely full of guys in the secondary. You talk about a guy out of Bama, Patrick Surtain. You talk about, your own Ohio State alumni, Sean Wade, who is possibly, in my opinion, the second best cornerback in the class. I think that the Browns need to make a move, kind of similar to they did when they brought in Odell Beckham Jr. But I predict that the Browns will end up moving Odell Beckham Jr. this offseason, because I think now they understand that they don't need Odell Beckham Jr. He's a great player. I'm not going to say they're better off without him, because he's an A-plus receiver. He's still great, but I don't think they need him anymore. I think it is about time they move him, possibly to trade up in the draft and get a better pick. Maybe bring in an A-plus corner in Patrick Surtain to play alongside Denzel Ward. Yeah,
and I was talking with my I had a career in sports class this past semester at Nordonia High School, and my teacher actually asked the class, raise your hand if you think the Browns should trade Odell Beckham, and everyone in the class raised their hand. No disrespect to Odell Beckham, but it seems like the Browns have that chemistry, and I think it's better for Odell Beckham to go to a situation where he would get, the ball a lot more. I think he was getting frustrated when he was playing with the Browns that he was just not receiving the ball. And I think if he goes to play, with an another elite quarterback, he will definitely be touching the ball a lot more. Logan, let's get into the rest of the NFL season right now. We were talking about the conference championships. You were mentioning a bit of that Bills-Chiefs game. However, we do have another game going on. That's going to be the NFC Championship. Buccaneers going up against the Green Bay Packers. So Tom Brady took on Drew Brees in a matchup of historic proportions. Tom Brady got the better of Drew Brees last Sunday. Buccaneers won 30-20, and now Tom Brady's going to be going up against another elite quarterback and experienced quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. That game will take place tomorrow at 3:05 p.m. from Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So, Logan, what are your thoughts on this Buccaneers-Packers game? This is one's going to decide which team's going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Is it Tom Brady going to go to yet another Super Bowl, or can Aaron Rodgers and the Packers go to the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on that one?
I have thought about this all week long. I've been thinking about this game because, to me, I could care less, honestly, about the Chiefs game because I think it's going to be a shootout, and I think whoever has the ball last is going to win that game.
Yeah.
But this NFC Championship game is going to be a great game, and I'm going to have to take Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in this one, and I'll tell you why. To me, in these championship games, you're talking about two elite offenses. Both have receivers who have played really well this year.
Mm-hmm.
Brady's elite. Aaron Rodgers is elite. Aaron Rodgers is the best talent we've seen in the NFL, in my opinion. Mahomes is up there, but Aaron Rodgers is the best arm.
Right.
Straight up, straight on the money arm. Brady's the greatest of all time, in my opinion. In a lot of people's minds, he is the greatest of all time. But to me, it's about the supporting cast. Devontae Adams. Can you tell me that there's Devontae Adams on the Bucs? No, you can't, because there isn't one. Antonio Brown's the closest it gets to me. I mean, both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans have underperformed this year, but AB has come in and played pretty well these past few weeks. But to me, the biggest factor of this game is the defense. The Packers' defense has underperformed all year long. They've played better than I would have expected them, so I wouldn't say they underperformed. But they're not a good defense at the end of the day.
Right.
This team is built to put up 40 and allow 30. So that is the biggest difference. But the Bucs defense, you've got young guys who have played amazing football games. You talk about a guy like Antoine Winfield with the game-sealing forced fumble on Jared Cook against the Drew Brees-led Saints last week.
Yeah.
You talk about Devin White, one of the best young linebackers. You're talking about Lavonte David. There are just so many assets on that defense that, to me, is just going to make the difference. I'm going to give a final score of 27-21 with a Brady on a game-winning drive in dramatic fashion.
Yeah.
Brady games always are.
Yeah, that's definitely, like you said, Logan, going to be a very entertaining game. The game will be in Green Bay, Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. I mean, it's really hard to doubt against Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, which makes this game even that more exciting. So I know you said you're not looking to the AFC Championship game as much as the Bucs-Packers game, but let's get into this one a little bit more, Logan. Bills have been on a roll, absolutely destroyed the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen and the company cruising to the AFC Championship. But Kansas City had the best record in the NFL this year. If Patrick Mahomes is back healthy from that concussion, Logan, I mean, let's clarify this. Chiefs have no chance without Patrick Mahomes. I think we both can say that, at least. However, if Patrick Mahomes is ready to go, especially on their home turf, who do you see winning this game? Because you've harped about how great Stephon Diggs has been as well, and he really has been terrific this season. But what are your overall thoughts on this game, and what are your predictions?
I would say the Chiefs' chances of winning this game without Patrick Mahomes goes from about 50 to about 25.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't entirely out of it. I mean, Andy Reid, in my opinion, right now, Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time. But at the end of the day, when it comes to scheming offensive plays for his stars, Andy Reid is the best in the business. They were highlighting, if you watch the Browns against the Chiefs game, they highlighted the same route Tyreek Hill ran.
Yeah.
And they just read it. It was a different read every time. So, I mean, if you're an NFL quarterback and you can throw the ball to wide open guys who are socially distancing from the defense, then I'm pretty sure that you've got a chance to win every game. So I wouldn't say they wouldn't have a chance. But if Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs hook up the way that they have all year long, I would say they have no chance. To me, if Patrick Mahomes plays, I'm going to take the Bills 35-28. I think it's going to be a tight one, but I just don't see the Chiefs winning. And then if Henny plays, I'll still take the Bills. Probably I'll take them 42 to probably 17 because they're going to get the ball a lot more and they're going to move it better. So
right.
But I think it's a high scoring affair if Mahomes plays, and if not, I think it's going to be kind of one of those old regular season games.
Yeah, super excited to see how both of these conference championships turn out. Just to update you, ladies and gentlemen, just to refresh your memory, Buccaneers playing the Packers tomorrow at 3:05 p.m. Also tomorrow, the AFC Conference Championship as well, with the Bills taking on the Chiefs at 6:40 p.m. Super Bowl will be on February 7th of this year, Super Bowl 55 at 6:30 p.m. Logan and I will make our predictions on that game next week once we have our conference championships completed, and we'll move on to the Super Bowl. Logan, that completes our episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining us. It really is always a pleasure to have your insight, especially as the NFL playoffs are really starting to ramp up now, and it really gets great. So I really appreciate all of your help and all of your wonderful analysis as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. You just heard me getting off the phone with Mr. Purcell. Now, if you're probably wondering, Darius, that was such an amazing show you had with Logan. I want to listen to even more of your podcast. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You are in luck. If you're listening to the Cleveland Sports Show from NordoniaHills.News, just go to the Contributors tab and click on my name, Darius Sethna. It's about the second or third one down. It's spelled Dariussethna. Once you click on my name, you'll be able to see all the work I've done on Nordonia for the Nordonia Hills Media Network. I've done some broadcasting for the high school boys basketball games. All my past episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show, and I've also had the chance to write some articles during the COVID-19 hiatus as well. So you have a little bit of everything. All of my work can also be found on Twitter. So make sure if you're on Twitter, just type in my Twitter handle at Nordonia Sports, or you can type in my name again, spelled Dariussethna. You'll be able to find all my work, all the episodes on my Twitter page as well. Also, I'm so happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show is on Spotify, so if you're on the go, just type in my name, spelled Dariussethna in the Spotify search bar, and you will be able to listen to all my episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show with Logan and I. And also, I'm happy to announce that the Cleveland Sports Show is also on NordoniaHills.News' YouTube channel. So if you're on YouTube and on the NordoniaHills.News media channel, their page, all my episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show will be there as well. So if you missed Logan and I giving our in-depth analysis, then you can watch it there and listen to it, to be more specific, on YouTube as well. So there are so many options for you to access all my work as well as the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our 94th edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Only 6 more episodes to go till the special 100th edition of our podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this week. Really appreciate all of your support. Have a wonderful weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Go Cavs, and we'll see you next week.